Obviously, thanks for coming on the podcast with James and myself. We appreciate some time, mate. We've got you on. You're the owner of Cage Steel. Got you on to talk a bit about what it's been like being the owner of an MMA promotion going through the last year that we've had and the stresses and the ups and the downs of it. So tell us a wee. We'll get to that in a wee minute actually. But first of all, I wanted to find out a wee bit about yourself and what brought you to end up getting involved in MMA and owning a show.
Oh, okay. So. My journey started at 6 years old. So I'm a son of a Royal Artillery soldier, dragged around the world. You kind of the Royal Artillery's Latin kind of motif is ubique, which means everywhere, because you obviously don't keep your artillery in one place. So we're dragged around the world as kids: Cyprus, Singapore, Germany. Countless places in like Britain, Ireland, and places like that. And every time you went onto a military camp, it would depend who had a black belt and who was willing to teach the brats, as the army kids are known as, brats. So I started off judo at 6 years old, and then did like 10 martial arts through my kind of childhood, never really finishing one of them because 6 to 8 months later, you was on a plane off somewhere else and then doing Kung Fu, Gung Fu, Wing Chun, Jeet Kune Do, Muay Thai, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, like 10 different arts. It was crazy. And I hated the fact that I never kind of completed any. And then all of a sudden, mixed martial arts came about and it was like, oh, all right, okay, this is cool. Being totally honest with you, in my mid-20s, I became a bit of an idiot, got into like football stuff and, looked at, there was points when I was arrested at a numerous grounds. It's kind of hard to say now because it seems like a different person. It certainly wasn't me as I am now. I was kind of living other people's expectations. So I decided that it was about 5 years of my life that I didn't have martial arts in. And I decided that it was martial arts that kind of kept me grounded. So I walked into a gym and just thought I'll get some respect, discipline back in my life. And as I did, they applied for a taekwondo instructor. And a young kid came along, about 18 years old at the time, a young kid called Danny Mitchell. So it ended up that I was like teaching the kickboxing and junior kickboxing, and Danny was teaching taekwondo, and then started doing all sorts of stuff. And we didn't kind of like how they ran the gym and stuff and how they kind of treated people. So we set up on our own. It was 2005, quite early in the kind of UK MMA days. Probably a little bit too early. Danny wanted a pure fight gym. And if you look at Danny now, he's got exactly what he wanted back then. It was just kind of too early for the time. I mean, he's got an incredible gym now. He's got like 70 odd pro fighters in there or something. So we kind of had to split the gym up. But at the time, I'd said to him, why don't we promote a show? And someone got in there first. And I'm a bit mad in business. I'm a bit like, let's do it big, let's go crazy. So Danny was like, let's do a local leisure centre. And I was like, let's do Doncaster Dome, which is like 2,000 people. And someone started promoting there, and they promoted a really good show. But I don't know I can't remember what happened to promotion, but it kind of ceased to exist. And I'm going into a lot here. So I was operations manager at Doncaster Council, had a proper job, and I decided to leave. I took a redundancy from like a £60,000 a year job. I had a really good job, but I wanted to do something for myself, and I thought I'm not gonna like regret it. There were redundancies on the table because of austerity, so I I took a gamble, went and worked for myself, set up a facilities management company. I was doing really well, bumped into Danny Mitchell. 3 years, nobody had promoted the show at the Dome. So I said, hey, Danny, we always talked about the show. Why don't we do it? I've got a company, I've got something behind us. And that's how it was born.
That's how it was born. And I mean, you guys have been, you've put on a good show. You can see, obviously, the production's good. And things seem to be going great for these. And then, obviously, like we have it. James, have you had guys on Cage Steel?
No, not through Higher Level. I've gave Danny names and stuff before, but for one reason or another, it's never came through. I know Rhys McEwen had fought in there and stuff like that.
Yeah.
For some weird reason, I've not actually. It's like one of the kind of only. It's known. It's got a reputation for really looking after the fighters, which is obviously the kind of shows that we want to work with. And obviously, I know Danny really well. I've fought on shows with him and stuff, and then I always see him in hotels and at shows when he's cornered now. So it's definitely something I want to get guys on, especially these ones coming up, obviously. But I've sent names before. I think I've just never had guys matched, or maybe even I've had guys matched and fights have fell through and stuff like that. But hopefully
we should look at it, James. We should definitely look at it, because like I love having the guys from up Scotland on. They're fantastic in terms of the way they operate, the way they kind of carry themselves, very professional. And you know something? The fans up there are unbelievable. Rhys McEwen fought on the show, and he brought like 30 people down from Glasgow and had pay-per-views, and honestly, and you know what? He fought a really tough kid called Louis Lee Scott, which was one of Danny's lads. And Louis obviously, he's gonna do something, as I think Rhys will. Now Rhys, all the fans, they didn't get the result on the day, and I actually went up to the fans at the end and I said, you know what? You've come down and you've kind of carried yourself off so incredibly well. They really kind of gave a good account of Scottish kind of MMA fans. It was incredible. So I definitely want the kind of Scottish fighters on the show.
Yeah, and just when you're on that Rhys fight, I think that was a really good fight for Rhys as well, going in there against Louis, because obviously Louis's got a ton of experience. I think that was a really good fight for Rhys as well, a big learning fight. But James, you've just mentioned there, obviously, Dom, you've got shows coming up. And I've spoke to Danny, because obviously Danny's matching for the shows, and I think Danny's inbox has been absolutely inundated since he put the word out. And that kind of just, because obviously we've had the big shows on, we've had the UFC on, and some Bellator's, Cage Warriors and stuff, but regionally guys are starved for fights at the minute. And
I know.
So obviously when you've announced the fights, I mean, I'm sure Danny spoke to you about the amount of guys reaching out. What's that response been like from fighters?
Well, put it this way, Danny, me and Danny communicate in WhatsApp voice notes, because there tends to be so much to talk about. You've kind of got to just boof quick, and you can listen to it quick. You can kind of get tone of voice as well, so it's really good. One of Danny's messages, we've been kind of communicating all day, voice notes all day, different fighters messaging both of us, and then I taught a Zoom class at night, and then picked up a voice note from Danny, and it said, I forgot how stressful this is. So he had a year off. I think you were looking forward to getting back to it, and then when he did, he obviously put that message out to kind of gauge what was going on. Boom! He has been hitting blocks, he's blowing up. To be fair, it happened to me on kind of Saturday. I put we have a Cage Shield Insiders group, and I put out there saying I'm looking to do this kind of pay-per-view show. And I made myself the busiest man ever on Saturday and Sunday. I never stopped. And then obviously Danny picked it up the other day, and kind of everyone went to him instead. So I was I was happy he did that. He did it off his own back, so I'm like, that's his own fault.
Well, that's be careful what you wish for. Like James, you've spoken about trying to matchmaking MMA shows before with dropouts and everything, the stresses involved. Can you imagine trying to do one now under the current climate?
Oh.
No, it'd be horrific, man, because everybody thinks that you owe them a favour and stuff like that, or like they're doing you a favour, giving you names and stuff. But I know, personally, the guys in my gym it's every day I need a fight, when can I fight? And this has been for a year now, obviously. We thought we were going to close for 2 weeks. And a year later, you've got professional level fighters who are 32-year-old and maybe got a year or two left to compete. Yeah. They've lost a year. We've got a group of about 5 guys who just were meant to have 1 or 2 more amateur fights last year and then turn pro. So we've just had to skip the amateur fights. They're just going to go straight to pro now, and it's every day. And this is me just getting off of like the 30 fighters that I coach, so I can't imagine what it's going to be like for you guys.
I'll tell you something, right? It's even more difficult than normal, and I'll tell you why. Some people have not stopped training, even though they can't train in the gyms. They're literally on fire. They're the fittest they've ever been. They've been on bikes and running, and they're absolutely incredible. And they're saying, actually, I might try lighter because I'm so light now. And then you've got other ones who, for instance, one lad who I think he fought 84, and I said to his coach, what weight's he at? And they said, he got 2 lads from his gym. He's like, this lad's never stopped. He's proper on weight. Blah, blah. The other lad said, what's he at? He said, he's 112. I'm like, wow. he kind of done nothing and just ate, I think. So we've now got like lockdown weights going on. So where they were in categories before, it's kind of all over the place, And that's the thing. Some people are saying, well, I haven't trained, so I can't make that show because I'm just not ready. And some people are absolutely on it, and it's even worse now. So, you kind of got to. This is the kind of big thing with shows, matching and dropouts. And I used to get really stressed about it, like really stressed. You could be like the wheel. You're like, oh no, we've lost so and so, and I'd be like banging my desk and all sorts. And now I've kind of got a different mindset to it. Is the fact that I've got a job that I absolutely love, that I go to every day, and I just love that job. I love the team that I've got around me are fantastic. So I'm kind of blessed. Now, every single job has its kind of downsides, There'll be something in every job that annoys someone. That's kind of ours. So I just say, you know what? That's the only thing that kind of upsets you. So why should it upset me when I get all the rest of it that comes with it? I've got to accept it. It's part of it. And now that's kind of made me a bit more chilled. Hopefully I'll live a bit longer, because there ain't a long life to that stress,
If you almost come to expect, because there's certain things we shows where you almost expect dropouts and last minute things happening. It feels like sometimes if you're running the show, you almost just need to learn to roll with it. Yeah. And are you in that position now where you've just kind of got to that stage where you're like, look, these things happen, they're out with my control. You just need to deal with it as it comes up.
Absolutely. I keep reading the Serenity poem, the courage to do the things that can change and all that stuff. So, but I have to say, I have an amazing guy in Danny Mitchell. So that guy is absolutely incredible. We can have a dropout on the day and he'll pull a fight out of his back pocket. It's like, where did you get that from? He has literally saved so many fights because he's got so many contacts, and people just kind of put out. I kind of like his comments now, where he always puts out saying, I want X fighter, or I want these fighters. And then he puts the little emojis. no houses, no weirdos, no shit houses. Because don't get me wrong, we've been through them. You know, we've had people where they don't show up, and it's just, I think as you kind of move through your show and as you kind of learn a bit more and as you become a bit more established and people are more trusting of you, and as you look after the fight, as people kind of talk about it, and then you kind of get the better, more professional coaches, managers and fighters.
Yeah. And
then that makes everything a little bit easier. I can honestly say it's easier now than it was the first show. The first show, there's a lake at the back, or there used to be, they've turned it into a cycle track. There's a lake at the back of the dome. And I can remember me and Danny, the first show, and I can't remember which one of us said it, but one of us said, I feel like filling my pockets with stones and chucking myself in the lake. And honestly, it was horrendous.
Yeah. It's like anything else, though. The more you do it, the better you get at it. And I think as well, when you're talking about Danny's connections here, and James, you can speak to this, you probably find a lot of the guys that are coaching now were fighting in the earlier days, and we were all fighting in the same circuits, and it's why those guys have now moved into coaching and all know each other. Like you were saying there, Danny, James, you've fought in shows with Danny and stuff like that. So do you find that with the gyms around the UK and Ireland?
Yeah, it's like maybe me and Danny's younger than me, obviously, but it's almost like we're the second or third generation of MMA guys coming through, and just the stuff Danny's done in the sport. There's nothing in the sport. There should be nothing in the sport that surprises him. He's had to deal with. He'd have seen everything. He's done everything in the sport. He's fought, obviously, promoting, matchmaking, ref, judged, MC. Do you know what I mean? He's done it, every job you can think of. Yeah. He's done it. I remember him fighting in working men's clubs and stuff like that. 200 people at it, and then obviously he's went all the way up through to the UFC and stuff like that. So the experience he's got, again, nothing's going to faze him, and also just his reputation. Everybody in the UK knows, like, he's a legit guy. Yeah. He's been there, done that and stuff like that, and you can see that way what he's doing now with his team. Like you mentioned earlier, his team's phenomenal just now, so it definitely helps, I think, that experience. And I think it sounds like you've got a nice balance between the business side of it and then Danny having the kind of experience of some of the shit that maybe other guys will not see, because there's been a bunch of promoters, I've seen a lot of them up here, and it's just guys coming over thinking, I'll just fire some shows together and make some quick money, and they don't understand the dynamics of the sport. Like, they don't know what goes on in gyms and the matchmaking stuff, and I think it's just as easy as booking a venue and firing off some emails, I think. But obviously Danny's seen everything, so
absolutely,
and for you, Dom, I'd love to, because obviously the other thing I wanted to ask you about was the importance of social media in promoting a show, because obviously back in the early days of the sport, we didn't have social media, so I can't imagine what it would have been like trying to promote a show then. But how important do you think social media is for a promotion like Cage Steel?
Well, in simple terms, so I don't know how Eddie Hearn used to promote boxing. I really don't know how he used to do it, because they didn't have social media. It was all about posters out and things like that. So if you look at Matchroom Sports, for instance, so Eddie Hearn used to go out, and Eddie Hearn is kind of someone that I look at and think, what a guy, you know, from promotion point of view, he's done really well as a businessman. He used to fill like York Hall, Bethnal Green, a couple of thousand people. Now social media's taken over. We're having the biggest fight shows ever. Eddie, his son, has come through, embraced the kind of social media, the new generation stuff. They're filling Wembley, 80,000. That's the difference, and that's why you have to look at it. And I'll be totally honest with you. I had my job at Doncaster Council. My friends all give me stick now because I used to be like, I hate Facebook. I don't want to know what someone's had for their tea. And they'll say to me, you're never off it now. and the thing is, you can't. You have to be. You have to be on it, and it kind of keeps me young as well, because you're kind of dealing with younger fighters, and you know, they'll all use different platforms. One will be on Instagram, one will be on Facebook, one will be on Snapchat, or you know, and you're getting these messages from all over these different platforms, and it kind of does keep you young, you know, rather than becoming an old fart going bloody social media. I think that would be me.
Yeah. I mean, it's so important, James. You'll have seen the changes over the years as well, obviously, with the different social medias making. And I mean, your guys in the gym, a lot of your guys are really active in it as well.
I used to promote shows back in like maybe 2006 to about 12. I think I'd done about maybe 30 shows. So we'd done the
tough times them as well.
Yeah, well, I'd done the posters. I remember running a bit with a tub of wallpaper paste and a backpack full of posters, just firing them up everywhere. And so it's a nightmare, man. But
yeah.
I remember the media had always been pushed, or social media was always pushed for the UFC. There was a time when they were signing fighters on the number of followers they would have on Twitter and stuff like that. So you were getting guys buying Twitter followers and shit like that. So it just shows you the importance of it, even if the UFC were kind of affected by it to a degree. But it's definitely it's a young person thing. I hate it, but I need it for the gym.
I know, yeah.
I think every business these days needs it, even out with combat sports. Every business has to have a social media presence, because it's what the younger generation look at. They're not waiting to 10 o'clock to watch the news or anything like that. It's social media. It's a massive importance. And Dom, for you going forward, tell us a wee bit more about the shows you've got coming up and what you've got planned.
So we were kind of early stage. So what I was looking at doing, I was looking at doing kind of numerous shows within June, because it was like, well, this is just going to keep going on. So we'll do something in June, and we'll maybe put a couple of weekends or a month, or just do something crazy. But then Boris comes out and decides that he's going to let everybody out to play, and it's like, oh, hang on a minute, there's a kind of end in sight, which kind of caught me on the hop a little bit, because they've always been so cautious and kept us so kind of locked down. It was like, well, hang on, they're talking about shows on May 17th. Like, we could have potentially had kind of half crowd at the Dome, but early on spoke to like the people, and it was like, that's not going to happen. But once people are doing shows, and some of the smaller shows may be able to operate within those kind of confines. So it was like, well, if we do June, it's kind of too late now. So we've had to look at what can we do before pubs open. So we're kind of looking at a show, and we hadn't announced this yet, so you've got a bit of an exclusive here. So
great.
We're looking at April the 10th, putting on a show where we'll do like a prelim card, and then more of a TV style. So pretty much kind of copying the UFC. So how they do the kind of 8 to 10 fights where, you'll lead them in, you'll have interview the fighters, you'll run through some stuff. So that's what we're looking at doing. And it is literally, we are flying by the seat of our pants right now, because we are just trying to pull things together. And, I kind of had some crazy ideas, and everyone's had to say, calm down, calm down. So don't be going mad, because I am a bit crazy. Like, I do some crazy stuff. So I always like to be like out there and do something mad. Everyone's like, look, calm down. Let's do a show on the 10th of April. And we'll kind of take it from there. So I've kind of secured a venue, and we're going to that's what we're going to do. So like I said, we hadn't even announced yet. We were going to do a press conference on it, but I've probably blown it now.
We're definitely not editing that out, by the way. That stays in. No chance that's leaving. So is it just going?
You got me at a good time.
So I think it's just going to be a pay-per-view format for people. You bring in a company to do that, put out the prelims, then people pay to get into the pay-per-view.
Yeah, so what we realised was, because I've had to play this, what if, and it was like, well, what if we kind of stay until so we've got a May 29th show booked, we've got an August show, August 21st and December the 4th, I think it is. So it was like, well, what if we just kind of see what we can do on May 29th? If we can't do a show, just leave it. Let's go again in August. Let's push it as we normally do. And then carry on the shows like that. I mean, we've always kind of pushed for the audience to be there. Yeah. And we've gone off the atmosphere. There's great atmosphere in Doncaster Dome because it's kind of a smallish roof. So when there's cheers go up, it's kind of mad because it's a bit like I don't even know what construction is, kind of like a tin roof, if you like. So it echoes about. So we've always gone off this atmosphere as one of our selling points. So it's like, well, if we're not selling atmosphere, how is it cage steel? So should we do it? And I've kind of gone backwards and forwards. Should we or shouldn't we? And I'll tell you the reason why I decided I'm going to have to do this is someone touched on it earlier. I think it was James, the other James. He said
it's one of the Jameses.
Yeah, fighters that are 33 and probably only got a couple of years left. So we've got a fighter that we've got signed up on an exclusivity deal called Adam Bramold. Myself and Danny discussed this, and I signed him on a kind of 5-figure contract, the first time anyone's ever done that in the UK. And the reason I did it was I really saw that he'd got potential to go into the UFC. So the idea was kind of give him a platform to work off. Danny can manage him and he can look at fights that we can discuss together that work for the promotion, and they're tough fights. He has to have tough fights. It can't be kind of rubbish fights. We brought people in from kind of Madrid and places like that. So, and then kind of steer his career. And we honestly thought he'd have his fight on March 2020, August, December, and March 2021. And then he's going to be ready to go, potentially top of the tree. His career has been stopped. Now, Adam's a great kid, honestly, a really nice kid. He's a great professional. He's one of those lads that work with the promotion, really push the show, brings 100+ fans. But like I said, a really nice kid. And I was like, right, I've got this lad's career wrapped up in a contract. He can't, if he'd have come to me and said, there's a fight show, want him, and they're going to fly him out to Azerbaijan, I'd have signed him a waiver, no problem at all. I'd have helped him out. But that obviously hasn't happened because no one can kind of travel. And so I was like, right, this lad's got a short career. If I don't do something, he's going to drop out of the rankings. If we don't do something before 14 months, some of the ranking kind of forums, they drop them out. So it was like, we're going to have to do April so that he can be in the rankings. So that's the kind of reason, is to get the fighters back on it. It isn't really about the show as much. It's about the scene. And the thing is, it could easily kind of break even, take the UFC. So if you look at the UFC, they've had some great fighters from Britain. Look at Michael Bisping, how far he did and what he did. You take that network away. So if there's no shows going on, there's no fighters, and the fighters end up, packing it in and going and doing something else, then that whole network breaks. And then you don't have your Michael Bispings going through. So eventually there will be a knock-on effect into the UFC, into America. And that could happen from quite a few different countries. So I was like, you know what? There's a kind of bigger responsibility as a business. Now, it's going to be very difficult for us. I'll be honest with you. It's going to be very difficult because there are a lot of MMA fans who are kind of MMA snobs, if you like. They'll watch the UFC, but they don't want to, or they don't. I don't know if they don't want to. They've kind of not been brought up to support the smaller shows. So it's trying to get them to understand about coming and helping out, if you like, and really pulling the scene together to say, look, whoever puts on a show, we need to kind of support as a MMA community, because it's the coaches, the fighters, the managers, the gyms. You know, if people stop doing this sport in this country, you imagine what impact that has. You know, the coaches, you know, your gym, James, it's like, well, you know, people will stop going into the gyms and stop training it. And what a travesty that would be after, you know, there's a lot of people like James there who's, you know, you promoted shows back in the early days, and it's you guys that pioneered it for like our shows now. We wouldn't exist if it wasn't for people like you. You know, there's a lot of people kind of walked through that minefield, if you like, in the early days that we've been able to walk in their tracks. So it's kind of having to do something to keep the scene going, if you like.
Yeah, and it's a shame sometimes as well, because some of the best fights and best knockouts and stuff I've seen have come on regional shows.
Yeah,
and it's
like great fights.
I've said to friends before, look, if you like the UFC, watch some regional shows. You'll see some really fun fights, and you'll have a great time. But it's not easy sometimes to push that out.
No.
And with regards to the pay-per-view format, Dom, is this, depending on how this goes, is this potentially something when we get to some normality, is this potentially something you as a promotion could maybe look at doing, depending on cost, having your live show but potentially putting on some form of pay-per-view format?
Yeah, do you know what? We've kind of said it's what we want to do is we want to use this because we have had pay-per-view in the past.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not been our kind of key driver or our main focus. We've always focused on the audience. Even, you know, we've had to have discussions, like kind of honest discussions with ourselves today, actually, in a kind of boardroom meeting, which was when we do these shows, we set everything for the audience. So we stick the MC at the back of the cage where, so I don't know if you've seen like the dome, but it's set out, it's kind of a three-way format, and at the back is nothing. So we put the MC back there, and he looks at the crowd and talks to the crowd. But that's rubbish for television. You know, they see just a black wall, when actually, if he turns around, there's 2,000 people there. Now, that's a different thing, is actually catering for the TV audience. But we all know that you can fit 2,000 people in the dome. There is no limit on the amount of people that can watch the pay-per-view shows. So in order to build the shows, I think it's something that we've got to kind of look at. So I think this is going to be an interesting time for us. You know, it'll kind of give us a few key things. It's where we've been talking to the production guys a lot more, and wanting more from that, if you like.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what we kind of come out the other side of it as. Because I've always said what you've got to do with this COVID thing is you've got to try and do things that make you better afterwards than you were before. And although we've kind of lost a year, there's certain things that we've done inside Cage Steel which have made us a better company.
Yeah, so ultimately at the end of it, the fans and people that watch the show are going to get a better product. And
yeah.
I mean that's what it's all about.
Yeah, I mean we've even, so one of the things that I always wanted to do was, because of my kind of background and my life, martial arts, I won't say saved me because that kind of sounds a bit over the top, but it certainly it helped my life, if you like. So I kind of always wanted to give back. So I wanted to put martial arts in schools for free so that we could teach young children and enhance their lives through martial arts. And I always find that the most respectful people have done some kind of martial art. So I wanted to kind of do that. Well, I've always been too busy. And suddenly we were stopped. I mean, I don't just have Cage Steel. I have a number of businesses. One is which a wedding and events venue, party venue. Well, that's I've got like two things in the worst industries ever, but I've got a health and safety company, like an online company that does a lot of schoolwork. So that was kind of busy, but the other stuff was stopped. So it was like, right, while we stopped, let's do the things that I've always wanted to do, but never had the time. So we actually started Cage Steel Martial Arts. We've been going into schools. Bit hit and miss because of COVID. We kind of, I think we did about 3 schools or something like that, and it was incredible. We'd done the schools and we did these like feedback forms, and these kids, like 8-9-year-old kids, were filling these forms, and it came to the end of their kind of 6 weeks process, and the team would bring these feedback forms back, and we'd sit around as a team and read these, and some of them were amazing. And that, as a company, I've always said it's not a business if it doesn't make money, but it's a poor business that only makes money. And I think that giving back, that legacy, it definitely works in the long run. Kind of that giving back always. You don't realize sometimes. So, obviously you're up in Scotland. So March the 14th, there was a guy up there from Greenock on the Clyde, a guy called Mark Waddell. He contacted me. He'd fought on the show, and he used to live in Doncaster, and really lovely guy. He's got like 3 young boys, and he's I'm sure he won't mind me saying this, his wife died on Christmas Day. And and he took on the boys, and he was absolutely superb guy for these lads, and they're doing Muay Thai. And he had to move back up to Scotland because of getting the family network around him, so he could kind of get them school and stuff like that. And he got in touch and he said, "I'd love to put a show on up here. There's an amazing town hall in Greenock. Can you help me?" I said, "I'll always help." And I kind of got talking to him. I said, "You know what? You need more than kind of me talking to you on the phone. I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll do it in association show." So I kind of put my marketing team on it, and we pushed it a bit for him. And we put a bit of resource behind him. And he did a fantastic show. And I've come home, and there's a parcel there. And he's put a note in there. And it's from Mark. And he said, "Sorry, mate, I forgot about this. I bought this to say thank you for helping me." And he bought me the old like 1980s Crown Paints Liverpool shirt with Dalglish on the back. And I was just like, and he actually quoted what I'd said to him, which I'd said, "People can give you money, but money can come and go. If someone gives you the time, they can never get that back. They give you the most precious thing they own." And he actually, this is over a year ago, and he kind of quoted that back to me. And I just thought, you know what? Sometimes you kind of give to people, and it does come back. I do believe that givers gain. So, us doing this stuff, somewhere along the line, it will kind of come back to us. But, at the minute, it's about kind of pushing the martial arts world.
No, that's brilliant, and it kind of leads me into the next question I was going to ask you. You kind of touched on it there.
Okay.
Cage Steel. Do you see Cage Steel travelling more specifically north, right up to Scotland? Is that ever? Have you thought about it? Taking the promotion elsewhere, potentially up 100%. Here?
This is one of those things where in kind of business, I am a planner. So I'll do business plans and I'll do kind of cash flow forecasts, and I'll work out, if I do this, what will this do? And I kind of love that stuff. The strategy of business gives me a massive buzz. I love the deals. I love doing stuff like that. So it was a kind of hole in the business plan. Is I got to the end and then it was like, what now? Because do we actually take it out and about, or do we stick to Doncaster and make Doncaster the kind of fighting capital of cage steel, if you like?
Yeah.
More and more, it intrigues me about taking it out and about. So we've linked up. So we'll definitely do an in association show again with the Rumble on the Clyde in Greenock on the Clyde. As soon as you guys are up and running again. We've also got a guy called Lewis who wants to do a show in Fort William in Ben Nevis. And I've said, I said, you know, he kind of messaged me and said, can you help? And I've said, you know what, let's do a in association. Because it for me, it gives me that, do I want to do this? Do I want this kick of it going about? The thing about the Greenock on the Clyde one is I didn't kind of get to experience it fully because it fell on the same day as Cage Steel. Yeah. So we was at our show and I was kind of ringing up, how's it going? And Mark was really stressed. It was like people pulling out and stuff. Like, welcome to the world of promotions. But I'm not one of these that, you know, when I first came into this industry, I was really surprised how people kind of protected their domain and wouldn't open up to other people. And I've always described it as like they're protecting their little cupcake. This is my cupcake, you know. And instead of releasing those ingredients and everyone putting them into a massive cake and us building this amazing cake and that you get a bigger slice. But people were scared that, I know my slice is bigger, but he's getting 2 slices. So what? Yes. Your slice is bigger. So why would you worry? And it kind of leads back to a Aesop's fable that I heard a long time ago, where it was like the greedy man and the envious man. They go to the king and the king says, one of you will ask me for something and I will grant it that person, but I will give the other person twice as much. The envious man's like, I'm not asking because I don't want him to get more. And the greedy man's like, I want all of it. I'm not saying. So the greedy man eventually says to the envious man, you pick. The envious man thinks about it and says, cut out one of my eyes. When you think about it, they were that envious and that greedy that rather than say, give me £1 million, I don't care that he's got 2. I've got £1 million. You know, and that's how people kind of looked at it. I'm one of these that's like, let's build, let's do
just
this.
Everybody can benefit.
We're not here for long, are we? So, you know, we've had a year where I think a lot of people have valued health and life a lot more than kind of wealth. So, we're not here for long. Let's see what we can do.
You've got to hope as well. The hunger's out there for MMA. So when you do the show and the pay-per-view, I really hope it does well for you. And obviously, in terms of Cage Steel, I would certainly like to see you come out and move about. And James, for you, if you were recommending a spot for Cage Steel to come to in Scotland, you've been around about up here, you know the best bits. Where would you recommend?
Hydro.
That's
where I look. You know, I say I'm crazy. That's where I look.
straight to the Hydro. I think Glasgow, maybe even Aberdeen. Like there's some good gyms up in the Inverness and stuff like that. Yeah. Even Dundee, I think somewhere that's central that just suits everybody. But to be honest, there's not really a bad place to do it in Scotland if you get the right venue.
Yeah,
it'll be well supported because there's a severe lack of quality shows up here. Even before the COVID thing, we were maybe getting 3 on top shows a year, which were the best ones up here. And then you're getting the Budo show now and again and stuff like that. But there's a severe lack of regular good shows. So I think anywhere but Edinburgh. Edinburgh just never took off in Edinburgh.
No. What we're saying, Dom, is there's a big gap in the market up here. You can get a few pieces of cake.
I like that. You use my own words against me now.
No, man, it's
I'd love to come there. Listen, I've said for a long time, like I said at the start of this, the Scottish people are incredible with support and things like that. My granddad was Scottish as well. He was in Scots Guard, so I've got a bit of an allegiance there. So I find Scotland and Scottish people incredible. Do you know the only thing about Scotland is that I didn't realise how big it was.
With Scotland,
you think it's being in England, you think that Scotland's quite small, but this is how I find out how big it was. So we did the Greenock on the Clyde stuff. So we was like, right, let's go up and visit them. So I had a BMW X5, and I went absolutely everywhere across the country. Filming different fighters, doing all the kind of promotion work for Cage Steel. I did 250,000 miles in that car, and every time I came to get rid of it, I looked at, I love this car, it's amazing. And then the gearbox went, so I'm like, right, I need a new car. So I bought another X5, and it had gremlins. It was like different electrics were going crazy. So I gave it back, got my money back. I thought, I'll get a car, and I was like, I'll wait till after the show because it's all crazy before the show. So I'd got a Seat Ibiza that I bought for my marketing guy. I'm like, we'll go up in that. So the first time in probably 10 years that I drove a manual car, and I'm 6'4", so any car doesn't really kind of have luxury unless, because the X5 obviously sat up a little bit. So we set off up there, and my marketing guy says, "There's no sat nav in this thing. It's gears." I'm like, "What has happened?" I've gone back 10 years. So we're heading up there, and he said, "Oh, there's loads of like accidents and things. So I'll get the phone, the sat nav on the phone, and I'll kind of co-pilot." Cool. So off we go, and we're going up. I'm saying, "Aren't we turning off anyway?" No, it's traffic. Okay, fair enough. We get to Newcastle. I'm like, "I'm sure this is good." Anyway, we carry on. I'm like, "Oh, are we heading off soon?" And as you know, Greenock is on the west coast. Mm-hmm. So we head up, get into Scotland. I said, "Alex," I said, "Yeah." I said, "So Greenock is on the west coast, yeah?" He says, yeah. I said, "Which means that the sea would be on our left-hand side." Right? I said, "Why is it there? Why is it on my right-hand side?" He literally took us all the way up Newcastle. We ended up on the east coast and had to drive all the way across Scotland. It took us 8 hours from here to get to Greenock. Changing gear, sat in a car. I'm like, why could I be in a bigger car or anything? It was, but you know what? We had a great time, so it was cool.
Could have been worse. You could have been driving to Fort William.
Do you know what, right? Well, that was the other thing. So I looked at it and I thought, right, I'm going to have a visit up to Scotland. There was a kind of management team in Edinburgh who I was going to speak to as well while I'm there. So I'm like, right, I'll go to Edinburgh, I'll go to Greenock, I'll go to Fort William. On my way, I'll call at Spennymoor and see the lodge fight team. So I'll do some interviews there. I'll make a bit of a road trip. And then started to look at, what? It was literally this triangle. It was like Edinburgh, Greenock, Fort William. I was like, no way. And that kind of hit home then, that actually Scotland's a lot bigger than we think.
You get to certain bits as well, you start hitting that deliverance country as well, so that's what, it's not banjos, it's bagpipes that come out of that's the only thing.
I know, I like them.
But listen, we'll let you go on that Dom. It was cool. It was a pleasure talking to you, mate, and Thanks for coming on the show. And listen, keep us posted about the shows, and we look forward to it. So send us anything when you're putting out the pay-per-views. We're glad to see somebody starting to get shows back on.
Definitely. Well, thanks for taking the time having me on the show. Like I said to James, the other James that set this up, I said, you know what? I love MMA and I love talking. So what is it to not like about being on a podcast? So
we do apologise. We've got too many Jameses in the show.
Just everyone's called James. You're not on the show if you're not called James.
Right, that's it. But again, thanks very much for coming on the show. We appreciate the time, mate. Cheers.